Good morning, everybody. Just jumping on here today to recap the Steelers-Broncos game that we watched yesterday afternoon. Little delay on my end, just because those evening finishes are a bit tough for me to get the post-game article up, notes for the recap, all that stuff, and record a video just before the algorithm just completely dismisses it. So, would much rather prefer just put out high quality of content before anything. Just try and not try to rush it. But I'll try to figure something out for these later games as we kind of move forward. But another really ugly win for the Steelers, but 2-0 was a good feeling. So let's talk about some things that stood out. Just before we do that, please make sure that you like, subscribe, drop me a comment, all that stuff. It's just a free, easy way to help support the channel. Helps me bring more content to you guys on a more consistent basis. Let's start with the offense because I feel like the defense was absolutely dominant. A lot of easy kind of talking points with that. But, I thought that Pittsburgh really dominated the first half, not just defensively, but I thought the offense moved the ball pretty much at will. You could tell, I feel like that there was a talent discrepancy really between these two teams. And really that matches up with what we talked about in the preview, too. I was saying that I was a little bit higher on the Denver defense, which I thought had a decent showing yesterday, but I thought that their offense was pretty brutal based on what I had seen on film. Just kind of looking at their roster from a talent perspective, but the offense as a whole moved the ball early on. I thought Fields played particularly very well in the first half, attacking outside the numbers. Had the long completion on third and long on that out route to Pickens, where he drove the ball to the perimeter, and then he made that beautiful, on the move kind of 51-yard dime down the right sideline to Pickens. Unfortunately, that play was called back, but I even thought that there was some encouraging signs with Justin, just in terms of how he was operating quick game. I thought the ball was coming out of his hands pretty quickly. I thought he was accurate to the sideline. The throw to Darnell on the back shoulder fade in the end zone was really pretty, just with touch, accuracy away from the defender. Good job identifying leverage, things like that. And then he had an explosive play on a scramble. So I thought that there was some good things in the first half. Of course, things stalled out in the second half, and we'll kind of talk about some of the reasons why that was possibly the case. But I thought he played solid. I think the box score is going to look a lot different, if he doesn't have some of these bigger plays called back over the last 2 weeks. But I think he's been generally fine and hasn't put the ball in harm's way. I would only say that there was one kind of somewhat dangerous throw even yesterday, the one over the middle of the field where he kind of telegraphed and kind of stared down the receiver. But I kind of want to talk about George too. I think he only finished the game with like 2 catches, 29 yards, but maybe the best 2-catch game that I've ever seen. I mean, he routed up Surtain on that third and long to the sideline. He forced multiple penalties that resulted in first downs. Also had a touchdown called back. Not really anything performance-wise for him. It was just kind of a pick play that, was kind of an unfortunate call. I think Van Jefferson probably could have sold it a little bit better. I also think that there are definitely times where that call isn't called at all. But I think he's the real deal. Like I kind of talked about in the pregame, the Pickens Surtain matchup was one that I was really looking forward to, just because of how much respect I have for Surtain as a player and how excited I am about Pickens as a player. Both those guys are really ascending upwards, and anytime we get kind of like good on good, best on the best type of matchups like that, that's always going to excite me as like a film watcher. But I thought that Pickens got the better of him yesterday. The box score probably doesn't reflect that, but I thought that there were some really strong moments from Pickens as a route runner, even like playing through contact and doing some of the things that we're accustomed to seeing him doing. And speaking of guys, I think that are trending upwards. Troy Fautanu got his first start yesterday, rookie debut, which was really exciting. Looking forward to diving into his film, especially in pass protection. I felt like he was really only threatened a couple different times throughout the game. Like I said in the preview, I think that Jonathan Cooper's a pretty solid player. He's a guy who, really broke out last year, has some speed to power to him. I thought was, not a superstar or, any type of player like that, but definitely an ascending player, someone that was a quality first test. And I thought that Troy mostly held his own. I think they did some things to help him out, but I thought that, Frazier had some really nice moments early in the game. I thought the offensive line as a whole kind of tailed off in the second half, but just like the rest of the offense did. But I'm really excited to see what the film looks like. I think both sacks, I think that were really instances where the ball should have come out. Not really on the offensive line as much, in my opinion, but we're likely going to try to do Fautanu in the film room this week. We may look at Fields as well if enough people are interested, depending on what the comments say or anything like that. Was considering putting that up for maybe members only if I have time to get to it, but if you're interested in more, film room content and early access to videos, make sure you jump on that. I'll leave the link in the description. But more than likely, Fautanu is going to be the film room focus this week, early in the week. So hopefully, can dive into that as soon as I'm done with this video. But the offense as a whole, like I said, really stalled out in the second half. I thought, Vance Joseph, Broncos defensive coordinator, did a really nice job heating them up by sending some pressures. And even though the ball was coming out, like Fields was getting the ball out quicker than he normally does. They just didn't seem to have great answers. I mean, felt like a lot of 50-50 balls down the sideline with very little separation to the other wide receivers, got bailed out by a couple penalties. Even like the play to Calvin Austin, the accuracy on that throw wasn't necessarily perfect, but I don't think there was a lot of space to kind of fit that ball into. Kind of got lucked out by an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, targeting or whatever from the free safety just coming in after the play, which kept that drive alive. But overall, like the run game wasn't overly efficient yesterday as either. Just a 21% rushing success rate. That's not going to cut it, especially for an offense that's built like this. They were 4 for 13 on third downs, consistently put themselves behind the chains, not just because of some of the inefficiencies running the ball, but just penalties. I mean, penalties have been a consistent theme over the first 2 games of the season. Last week against Atlanta in the postgame presser, Tomlin talked about that. He was disappointed. I don't remember the phrase he used to describe the 9 penalties that they took in Atlanta, but they had 10 yesterday. So, and it's like the same people too. Like, the tackle rotation, in my opinion, was just like galaxy brain coaching. I don't know what else to call that, to be honest with you. Rotating offensive linemen is never a good idea. I mean, I know some teams have done it in years past. Baltimore did it a little bit last year, but I feel like that was mostly like health related more than anything else. There's not much that we've seen from Broderick so far through the preseason or these 2 weeks that really suggests he should be on the field. And like, that's really blunt. And it's tough, but 3 penalties on one drive, one which was essentially a 60-yard play because it took away the 51-yarder. And he got called for holding. And that's a tough play. Anytime the quarterback gets outside the pocket, it's really like an offensive line coaching point too, especially like with Fields and even if Russ comes back or whatever. Anytime the quarterback gets out of the pocket, it's really easy for the offensive lineman to just grab on and hold. But in instances like this, where you've got Fields who runs a 4-4, like you don't need to hold. Like any type of edge rusher that you're going to be blocking isn't going to be able to run with him stride for stride. So it's just like an accommodation, um, you know, acclimation period, I guess you could say, for the offensive line, knowing that they've got, arguably the best athlete on the field in the pocket. So, but I mean, 3 penalties, just unacceptable in one drive. Nonetheless, I would expect him to be on the bench for the foreseeable future. It's really tough, right? Because for a player this raw, he needs the reps, but I also think that it's really tough to warrant giving him those reps right now, just because I feel like, Fautanu looked pretty good yesterday. I just coming out of college, I thought that Fautanu was, he graded significantly better as a prospect for me. So that would be, those two aren't really close. And then even Dan Moore, like I said, he hasn't played poorly enough to give up the job, and he's outplayed Jones to this point. So that's just kind of the reality of where we're at. But it does suck just because like Broderick he's a raw player who really needs to work on technique. I think it would also probably help if he was fully healthy, but not being able to get those reps probably isn't going to be great for his development. And obviously, in year two, you expect better things than this from a first round pick, a guy that they traded up into the top 15 for. So things are pretty bleak right now, but not going to let that kind of stop me from talking about some of the other stuff. But I just thought defensively, the Steelers did really well, just suffocating the Broncos offense, especially in the first half. I know they moved the ball a little bit down the stretch, but some of that was like trick plays and things like that I think kind of just desperation attempts from Denver. But Broncos had a 36% success rate. I felt like they got away from the run early, then kind of just threw Nix to the Wolves again, kind of like they did last week, honestly. Not a huge fan of Nix as a prospect, as many of you guys remember if you're around for the draft time on this channel, but he just, to me, doesn't look anywhere remotely ready right now. Most rookies aren't. Most rookie quarterbacks are bad. But Pittsburgh bottled up everything in the first half. The second half, Nick's missed some wide open throws that I thought would have been solid gains. But, I mean, that's just kind of the part of playing like a rookie quarterback. But I thought they did some really good things, particularly Watt and Highsmith. They won their respective matchups in pass protection, had some key rushes outside, kill drives. Both of them had a sack, I think multiple tackles for a loss yesterday too. So I don't expect anything else from those guys kind of in these matchups, but it's worth mentioning that those guys consistently show up and affect the game in a positive way. Thought Keanu Benton had another really strong game, multiple quick wins as a pass rusher in the first half. I tweeted that out during the game, but I know he's had at least two, maybe three run stops as well. He ran down a screen in pursuit from the backside. I think he's really trending upwards. I know the box score numbers aren't necessarily overly flashy right now, but this is a guy that I'm really excited about, and I'll continue to kind of reiterate that. Thought Cam Hayward was very solid once again. He's had a really good and productive 2 weeks, multiple run stops. He had 4 run stops last week, I think, against the Falcons, but he had a couple, I know, in this game as well. A couple quarterback hits, too. I want to say that there was at least one big play on a third down where he kind of pressured Nix into throwing off his back foot. But I mean, if he plays like this and stays healthy, man, the extension is going to look pretty sweet, barring a drop off. It's really it's been really cool to see him play at such a high level through 2 weeks for sure. Still want to see more from PQ. He missed 4 tackles last week. I didn't see the missed tackles necessarily on the live viewings, but I know he overran at least one play. Still, I'm just expecting like more splash or impact plays, not just because of the way that they are paying him, but just I think he's a better player than what we've seen through 2 weeks. There was a couple times in the run game where I felt like Denver was able to climb to the second level and get engaged with him, and he was struggling to disengage, get off blocks. But I think better days are probably ahead there as well. Didn't really see much from the other like off-ball linebackers. I'll try to pay a little bit more attention to them during the film room. I think the trick play was really a result of Minka getting a little greedy. I want to see the all 22 view of the play, but it looked like he kind of jumped a little bit. Should have stayed deep as the deepest. But again, you credit them for making that play. I think Deshaun Elliott's been fantastic as well. I think the thing about Deshaun is he's a guy that, coming into the season, I was kind of expecting just to always be in the right place at the right time. And like those guys have a lot of value, especially when it's a box safety that you're paying next to nothing for, but I think he's been even better than I anticipated, to be honest with you. He's been really solid through 2 weeks. I'm excited to have him. I think he's a pretty good compliment to what Minka brings you. And then, I think the other thing too, like Joey Porter, really uneven game for him. I mean, I thought he had a really nice pass deflection or forced incompletion at the sticks on third down early in the first half. He did a good job. He followed Cortland Sutton around. I expected Porter to kind of have the upper hand in that matchup regardless. He only held Sutton. I think Sutton had like one catch on him for like 20-something yards over the middle on a dig route. But, 3 penalties is 3 penalties. It's kind of hard to have a good game when those are kind of consistently occurring. I think the thing with Porter to me is like I've said this a lot, but I think the penalty thing is something that you're probably always going to have to live with just because of like his style of play and the physical brand of football that he brings. Because you don't want to like strip that from him because you want him to play with confidence. You want him to bring it on every snap and try to physically impose his will on receivers. But at the same time, like there is a line. Like you as a corner, you have to be cognizant of how the game's being called. Like throughout the game, you should be able to pick up on whether it's, how they're calling you or how they're calling, your teammates, or on the other side of the ball, you should be able to pick up on like if they're calling it close or if they're letting things go, and you got to adjust. And I felt like over the course of the game, he didn't adjust. There were a couple offsetting penalties for him. And I think really just generally speaking, one thing that I don't want to see is like, I don't want to see him kind of like last week, that push off that they called on Pickens. I don't want to see like him generate a reputation where he's like a grabby guy or anything like that. Cause then like refs just got the microscope on you every single play. Like anytime the ball's thrown down the field in your direction, they're going to be like, oh, he's holding. Like they're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So, I think the only guy who had more penalties than him last year was L'Jarius Sneed, also a good player. I think they're pretty like good stylistic comps too, but I don't know. I thought it was an uneven day, but he did some good things as well. But man, I couldn't be happier for Corey Trice. Like you guys know that if y'all were around, like when this channel first got started, was hugely excited about that draft pick. Just we all had so many questions. I feel like about the depth at corner, just because they didn't have any experience at all behind Porter, behind Dante Jackson, who was dealing with some cramps yesterday. Trice is forced into action right after that trick play, and he gets an interception in the end zone coverage. Looked like they were playing some variation of like cover three, but just getting zone eyes on Nix, reading where he was trying to go with the football to come in off the bench and grab your first interception in the end zone. That was like a 14-point swing potentially. It was just insane. Just some like cool analytics. I wanted to look this up before I recorded too, but that play actually generated the most EPA on Sunday for either team. Denver had a 21% win probability before that snap, and then it went down to 12% immediately after. So it was a massive play. Super excited for him, and I think it's a good thing for the Steelers that they actually have somebody that they should be fairly confident in to come in and give them decent balls. So he had some other snaps too, just playing in the dime, but interested to see what that film looks like. But I thought the defense has looked like I expected it to look. Granted, I think it was against some poor competition. I don't think Denver's offense is very good at all. Wouldn't be surprised if they finished bottom five. I just think that they lack talent over there. Atlanta definitely has some talent, but that's really all dependent on Cousins looking significantly better than he did in the opener. And definitely want to acknowledge that the Steelers defense did a great job making him uncomfortable. I thought they played really well from a performance standpoint, but just physically, I don't think Cousins looked remotely close to what I'm used to him looking like. And I also think that we've got to see him be able to like plant off that leg, move around enough to use play action, things like that. But I just think that this team is it's way too talented, particularly in the front seven, to finish any lower than like 10th in the defensive rankings. And honestly, the ceiling for this team is a lot higher in my opinion. But offensively, just another week where I feel like a bunch of big plays were taken off the board due to penalties. I mean, they did get some calls too that moved the chains and some pass interference. And we mentioned the unsportsmanlike conduct kind of targeting penalty. But man, it's tough to not be at least a little bit concerned about where this is going to look like when they play like more talented defense or get into games where they're going to have to score some more points. Think of games where you're going up against like these franchise caliber quarterbacks. We're going to see one next week with Justin Herbert. But I'm going to go dive into the all 22 since I get off here. But it just feels like they just lack so much juice on the outside. I didn't feel like they had good answers for some of the looks that they were seeing in the second half, some of the pressure stuff that Joseph was kind of bringing as the game kind of evolved. But would have liked to have seen a little bit more involvement for Freiermuth in those situations. But I just have very little confidence in the receivers outside of George Pickens. I mean, the numbers kind of bear that out, but I'm concerned about what that's going to look like. I'm just not really sure where this style of offense is going to land you in the grand scheme of things in the AFC. The run game's been okay. They've tried some different things. Trying to mix in some different stuff to go along with like the really heavy zone philosophy. But I think the offensive line, like once they get healthy, they get Sam Malo back. And get Fautanu in the fold, try to get some stability over there at right tackle. I think that's going to be something that gets better over the course of time. I really do. Art's still going to run the ball at an extremely high clip. I mean, I think they had 26 first down plays yesterday. I think they ran the ball on 16 or 17 of them. So they're going to run the ball the majority of first downs. That's just how he wants to play. But in order to do that, they've got to be more efficient running the ball than they were yesterday. And I think that's definitely possible as the offensive line continues to get better. Jaylen Warren gets back up to full speed. But the penalties, man, like they've just got to get cleaned up. I don't know what else to say, but playing this brand of football where you're going to really rely on your defense to keep games low scoring, you want to run the ball at a high clip and then try to find some explosives in the passing game. There's very little margin for error. Like that's the thing about like when you have a team that's still searching for like a franchise quarterback, and with this kind of style of roster, your margin for error just shrinks, and the penalties like something that's got to get cleaned up ASAP, starting this week. But having said that, Baltimore, Cincinnati, 0-2. So you'd rather win ugly than lose pretty. I feel like in a division like this, especially with this much talent, we kind of expect that both of those teams are probably going to be in the playoff hunt as the season continues. But just in order for me, like I said, to get really on board with this team as someone that can make noise in January, I've got to see some consistency, some more substance on offense. But shout out to our guy, Ben Skoranek, too. I would be remiss if I didn't bring him up. He had a really good day on special teams yesterday. I think he had the final tackle on the last punt of Waitman's. And also had some good moments, just like stringing out some different plays. Waitman was fine too. Like he was definitely booming the ball. I was impressed with like his leg. 3 touchbacks, not ideal. I thought that they, left some field positioning on the board, but given it was his first game, I think we can definitely give him a little bit of grace there. But anyways, y'all let me know what y'all thought of the game, how you feeling. I'll be back really soon. Like I said, jump in the film room in the next day or so, get some content uploaded for you guys. But if there's something you guys want to see, please make sure that you let me know. I will do my best to send something out on the community page sometime in the next 24 hours just to kind of update you guys on like the schedule and just of what to expect this coming week. But we got the Chargers coming in. Chargers that look pretty good, man. I'm excited to dive into their film as we get later into the week too, to just see, what the Steelers are going to be up against. But as always, I will check you guys really soon. Y'all make sure you have a great week. Peace and love.